The lobby smelled like money. Polished marble floors, gleaming gold fixtures, fresh orchids in glass vases that probably cost more than my monthly rent. And me? I stood there in jeans and a hoodie, clutching the reservation email on my cracked phone screen while the front desk agent stared at me like I'd just tracked dirt across her perfect little world. "I'm sorry, but you must be confused," she said, her red lipstick curling into a smirk. "This isn't that kind of hotel." My stomach dropped. "I have a reservation," I said, holding out my phone again. She didn't even look. She just reached under the counter and tapped something on the keyboard. Too fast, too dismissive. "We've been fully booked for weeks," she said louder this time, "and we don't take walk-ins, especially not—" She paused, eyes sweeping over my shoes like they'd insulted her ancestors. "Casual guests." Two men in suits chuckled behind me. A couple shifted uncomfortably nearby. I felt their eyes like heat on my back, like shame soaking into my skin. "Maybe you'd be more comfortable at one of the economy chains down the block," she added with a sugary tone. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, feeling the humiliation rise like bile. They didn't know who I was. Not yet. They didn't know my last name was carved into the marble at the back of the building, or that the man who'd soon walk through those doors wasn't a guest. He was the owner's son, and I was his daughter. Growing up, hotels were my second home. Not the kind of hotels where you get a mint on your pillow or a folded towel shaped like a swan. No, the kind of hotels where the lobby had its own art curator, where private elevators whispered your name, where people wore watches worth more than my college tuition, and all of them bore the same last name, mine. I used to spend summers playing hide and seek behind velvet ropes and marble columns while my father closed billion-dollar deals upstairs. I knew the staff by name, the real ones, the ones who stayed late and worked holidays and sent me extra chocolate cake when no one was looking. I knew what it meant to own a place like that, to belong to it. But somewhere along the way, I forgot how to look like I belonged. It happened slowly. College was my idea, a regular school, no private jets, no secret service, no family names stitched into the alumni wall. I wanted to know what it felt like to build something on my own, to live a life that wasn't weighed down by expectation. Dad didn't understand. Mom didn't either. But they let me go. With warnings, and sadness, and pride they tried not to show. 4 years later, I graduated with student debt instead of stock options. I took a job teaching art classes to kids in the suburbs. I shopped sales. I took buses. I wore sneakers until they wore holes through the soles. And I was happy. Maybe not glamorous, maybe not powerful, but happy. At least, until the reunion. Every few years, our family holds a shareholders' retreat, a gathering of owners, executives, and legacy families who hold the future of the company in their hands. It was supposed to be low-key this time. Just a simple gala dinner at one of our flagship hotels. Dad insisted I come. "You're still one of us," he said. "You still belong." I packed my best outfit, which honestly wasn't much. A second-hand dress, clean sneakers, my old reliable hoodie for the flight. I figured it didn't matter. Family would understand. I didn't book the reservation myself. Dad's assistant handled it, like always. All I had to do was show up, check in, and smile through a night of awkward small talk with people who still thought hard work meant choosing which yacht to sail for the weekend. Simple, right? Except when I walked into the lobby that afternoon, nothing about me looked like I belonged. No designer labels, no bodyguards, no air of polished, curated confidence. Just a tired girl in jeans and a hoodie dragging a beat-up duffel bag behind her. And the staff, they didn't see the daughter of the board chairman, they saw nothing. They saw a nuisance, an embarrassment, something to be swept quietly out of sight before the real guests arrived. The worst part wasn't that they humiliated me. It wasn't even that they suggested I belonged in a cheaper hotel down the block. It was that tiny, traitorous part of me, the part I'd spent years building up with pride and independence, that wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe I didn't belong. Maybe I never had. But standing there, cheeks burning under the judgmental glow of the lobby chandeliers, something inside me straightened. Not the part that needed their approval, the part that remembered who I was, who I am. Not because of a last name, not because of a balance sheet, but because I built myself when no one thought I could. And I was done letting anyone, make me feel small for choosing a different path. They didn't know who they were dealing with, but they were about to find out. They gave me a room, eventually, not because they realized who I was, but because the lobby had gotten crowded enough that they wanted me out of sight. A room on the 4th floor, at the farthest end of the hallway, next to the service elevator. Facing a brick wall. No apologies, no upgrades. Just a room key shoved across the counter and a fake smile. The carpet on that floor was worn. The walls were thinner. The view, if you could call it that, was a rectangle of peeling paint and bird droppings. I dropped my duffel on the floor and sat on the bed that creaked under my weight, staring at the water-stained ceiling. And for a minute, just a minute, I almost believed them. I almost let them shrink me back down to nothing. You don't belong here. You're not one of us. Go somewhere you fit in. The voices weren't just theirs. They were mine too. The small voice inside me that still believed worth had a dress code, a brand name, a pedigree. I hated that voice. I hated that it still lived inside me even after everything I'd built. I didn't cry, not right away. I just sat there empty, too tired to be angry, too proud to be pathetic. It wasn't until I pulled out my phone, opened the email chain confirming my reservation, and saw my father's name CC'd at the top, that the first tear fell. Not because of what they thought of me, because of what I had almost allowed myself to think of me. I wiped my face quickly, roughly, like scrubbing shame off my skin. And then, without overthinking it, I opened my messages. Scrolled down past unanswered texts from college friends, past passive-aggressive notes from Caroline about missing family events, past half-started conversations with old classmates who remembered me when it was convenient, until I found the only name that mattered. Dad, I typed. I'm here. It's bad. 2 seconds later, 3 dots appeared, and then, stay where you are, I'm coming. Simple. No questions, no judgment, just coming. I sat on that creaky bed, still wearing the hoodie everyone had judged me for, and realized maybe I didn't look like their idea of success. Maybe I didn't fit into their curated, airbrushed world. But I had something they would never understand. I had people who didn't need me to prove anything. People who didn't care how expensive my shoes were, or whether my bag had the right logo. People who saw me, and that made me more powerful than any of them. I didn't need a new outfit. I didn't need a better room. I didn't even need an apology. All I needed was to remember who the hell I was. And when the moment came, when they finally realized their mistake, I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't even raise my voice. I would just stand there and let them drown in the weight of everything they'd chosen to ignore. Because the thing about people who only see the surface, they never see the storm coming underneath. And baby, I was the whole damn hurricane. It didn't happen with fireworks, no grand speeches, no booming declarations. It started with silence, the kind of silence that falls like a heavy velvet curtain, thick, suffocating, final. I was still sitting on the edge of the hotel bed, phone clenched in my hand, when the first call came in. Not to me, to the front desk. I imagined the scene easily. The smug receptionist picking up the phone without looking, her fingers drumming against the marble counter, bored. until the voice on the other end froze her solid, until the colour drained from her face, until she realised she wasn't speaking to just another guest. I didn't rush. I didn't even change. I slid my phone into my pocket, pulled my hoodie tighter around me and walked back to the elevator. 4th floor, 3rd floor, 2nd, lobby. When the doors opened, the temperature in the room shifted. It was subtle, but palpable. A tension that crackled beneath the glossy surfaces and expensive suits. There were men in dark suits now, 2 standing by the door, 1 near the elevator bank, professional, imposing, silent, and standing at the centre of it all, with a quiet authority that made the chandeliers seem like cheap Christmas lights in comparison, was my father. He didn't dress like money. He didn't have to. A simple navy suit, a silver watch, a presence that said, "I built this place. I built you." The manager was there too. Not the receptionist, she was nowhere to be seen, but the general manager, the one whose name had been stitched proudly onto the hotel's website for years. He stood pale and stiff, twisting a pen between his fingers like a student caught cheating. Dad didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply turned toward me as I stepped into view and smiled. The kind of smile that says, "I see you, I know you, and I'm here." "There she is," he said, warm and low. "The guest you refused to check in properly. The guest you dismissed." The words weren't angry. They were factual. Worse, because anger can be forgiven. Facts cannot. The manager swallowed visibly. "Sir, we didn't know—" "No," Dad interrupted gently. "You didn't ask." Simple, sharp, undeniable. He turned slightly, scanning the staff members frozen behind the front desk, the same desk where I had stood hours ago, humiliated and small. "You judged her by what you saw," he said. "You decided what she was worth without knowing who she is." He didn't have to finish the sentence, because the truth hung there, louder than anything he could have said. You decided she was nothing. The receptionist appeared then, summoned by some invisible disaster siren. Her face was the colour of day-old coffee. Her voice was brittle as she stammered, We apologise for any misunderstanding." Dad didn't even look at her. He turned to me instead. "Would you like to stay here tonight?" he asked softly. I looked around the glittering lobby, the marble, the gold, the mirrors, the place that had once made me feel so small, and I smiled. "No," I said. "I think I'll find somewhere more comfortable." Dad nodded like that was the only answer he expected. Then he turned back to the manager, still twisting that useless pen. "We'll be reviewing your contract," he said lightly. "Effective immediately." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, but it was final. As we walked toward the exit, heads turned. Guests who had laughed behind their hands earlier, staff who had sneered, all watching now. Not a hoodie, not a duffel bag, not a tired girl they could dismiss. They watched a woman walk out with the kind of quiet dignity no chandelier could outshine. Outside, a sleek black car waited. Dad opened the door for me, and as I slid into the leather seat, I realised. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even justice. It was recognition. A reclaiming of something I had always had, even when the world pretended not to see it. They could judge the hoodie, they could judge the jeans, but they would never again mistake kindness for weakness. Not mine, not anyone's, not ever. We didn't rush out of the hotel. We walked slowly, intentionally, letting every step burn into the marble floors like a brand, letting every whisper, every side-eye glance, every sharp intake of breath etch itself into the air. As we passed the front desk, the receptionist who had smirked at me earlier tried to shrink behind the counter. It didn't work. Nothing could make her small enough to disappear now. "We're so terribly sorry," she stammered as we approached. Her voice was brittle, desperate. She looked at my father, then at me, then back again, searching for an ounce of forgiveness she hadn't earned. Dad paused, turning slightly. Not to her, to me. "What would you like to do?" he asked, voice smooth as glass. He wasn't asking what he should do. He was offering the power to me, the girl they thought wasn't even good enough for a lobby pass. I let the silence stretch, just long enough, just enough for her to feel it. Then I smiled, small, calm, cutting. "Let's leave them to the guests they think they deserve." Dad chuckled under his breath, not cruelly, but knowingly. Then he leaned toward the general manager, the one still twisting that stupid pen like it could save him. "Effective immediately, I want full retraining of all front-facing staff," he said. "New hospitality standards implemented, and I want the incident documented and circulated to every property under our brand." He smiled pleasantly, "as a case study in what not to do." The manager nodded stiffly, cheeks burning red. The receptionist froze completely. And us? We walked out, into sunlight, into air, into freedom, leaving behind the shallow opulence that had once tried to define me. A black car waited at the curb. Dad opened the door again, as casually as if this were just another board meeting. I slid into the leather seat. This time, when the door closed, it didn't feel like an escape. It felt like a beginning. As we pulled away, I glanced back one last time. The gold doors of the hotel gleamed in the sun, polished and hollow, like a castle made of paper, like a throne built on sand. In the reflection of the window, I caught a glimpse of myself. Still in the hoodie, still in the sneakers, still carrying the girl who fought her way through it all. But also carrying the woman who never needed permission to belong. They had treated me like trash, because they thought I had no power, because they thought power wore a suit and a Rolex and walked in with an entourage. They didn't understand. Real power doesn't have to announce itself. It moves quietly. It smiles kindly. It chooses not to destroy, even when it could. I didn't need them to know my name to prove who I was. I knew, I remembered, and that would always be enough. It's funny how fast people forget. A few days later, the hotel released a public apology, full of polished words and hollow regret. They promised better training, better service, better humanity. But none of that mattered to me anymore, because the only apology I ever needed was from myself. Forever thinking I had to prove I belonged. I spent so long trying to fit into a mold someone else made for me. The daughter of a hotel tycoon. The girl with the perfect smile and perfect shoes and perfect last name. But the truth? I wasn't made to blend in. I wasn't built to stay silent while someone else decided my worth. I didn't fight them because I wanted to destroy them. I fought because I finally remembered. You don't have to wear power to have it. You just have to own it. Quietly, boldly, unapologetically. Today I sit on the balcony of a small cafe overlooking the city skyline. No designer handbag, no borrowed polish, just a cup of coffee, a favorite hoodie, and a piece I built with my own hands. The world bustles around me, fast and loud and busy. But inside, I am still, rooted, untouchable. I think about the lobby sometimes, not with anger, not even with sadness, just with gratitude. Because sometimes the only way to find out how strong you are is to be underestimated, dismissed, overlooked, judged, and still choose to stand anyway. If you've ever been treated like trash, if you've ever been told you don't belong, if you've ever been made to feel small because you didn't look like the room you walked into, remember this: their vision of you has nothing to do with your value. Their blindness is not your burden, and the moment you stop waiting for them to recognize you, you'll finally see yourself, because you were never trash. You were gold they couldn't recognize, polished by fire, unbreakable by design.